All right, Patty, we are live to the public. Go ahead and start the meeting.
Okay, thank you. The January 18th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is called to order. A few things on our agenda tonight. The first, we'll be skipping the election of a chair and secretary for the commission. Rob sent an email. I don't know if everybody got it or if it was just to me, but there was some appointments were left out of the mayor's reappointments that he did last council meeting. So they'll be coming up at the next council meeting. So we're going to postpone electing a chair and secretary until our next meeting. Is that correct, Rob?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that'll be on our agenda for February. And if anybody's interested in one of those positions, think about in the meantime, or nominating somebody. And then there's a few things on here that came up from Harry and Rob, numbers 2, 3, and 4. And then I figured it's time we can all, since we don't have any big development issues to deal with or crises, we can start to think about if there's anything that sticks out to us as something that maybe we want to start looking into. So I guess we'll just go in order. Back to accessory structures, which we've talked about a lot. Rob, do you want to introduce this topic?
Sure, thank you. Over the last year, Harry and I have received several applications for accessory structures that are getting larger and larger in footprint. The way that we measure the area of accessory structures for zoning review is to look at the footprint of the structure, probably because the zoning code considered them to be one-story type facilities. But what we're seeing is with the larger sizes, we're seeing a lot more second floors being constructed. And Harry brought it to my attention that a lot of these second floors are being finished. Not that they're being done not according to code, but with them being finished, all of our other code sections that pertain to finished sections of livable occupiable space are included in the definition of area or calculations for square footage and things like that of those structures. So Harry had given me some examples, which we can share in a little bit. And I'm sure Harry will want to weigh in a little bit in explaining this issue. But we felt that it'd be good just to bring up and let planning and zoning know what we're seeing. We've actually seen a couple accessory structures that look completely like a garage, but then inside, even on the first floor, they're finished as usable space. Yet the zoning code treats them as like a garage or an accessory structure regarding area. So we had a few people, I know one person in particular that submitted an application that mentioned moving a home office, of which we denied, and we explained to them that wasn't permitted, and they altered and changed their plans. I know several sets of plans that Harry has seen have even shown outlines for beds in the structure. And we've explained that how our zoning code does not allow for second residences or occupied space or inhabitable space past just use of like like a multi-purpose room or something. You couldn't actually live in an accessory structure according to the way our code is interpreted. So we just wanted to bring this up and start some discussion on it. And maybe Harry can take the ball from here and further explain in detail some of the issues we've had. Harry, are you on?
Yep, I'm right here. So,
okay.
If you want
I
me
could share your email if you'd like.
that's fine. I told you if you'd like to do that. I gave Rob some of the examples of stuff that I've been seeing over the past couple of years. First, let me say, I'm not picking on any one project, nor am I picking on the architect or anything. They're all done with very well taste. But I just felt that we just need to talk about this, and maybe we don't need to make any changes and everything is status quo, but I just want, I'm your eyes and ears out there in the field, and want you to, see what's coming down the pike or has been through the office and stuff. So,
No, that's great, Harry, because I mean, as we all know, we've talked about this before,
right.
thinking it might be a problem, but like you say, you're the one that knows what's coming through, and then we're thinking, are we overstepping? Is this not really a problem? Why are we messing with something that's not a problem? So yeah, that's exactly, that's great.
So this first example here is up on North Street. This garage is currently under construction, and you can see from the front elevation, the garage height is 22 feet high. But if you look at the rear, it's 3 stories because of the way the topography falls off in the back. And actually, this detached garage has a basement. The middle section's the garage, and then above it is could be a home office. When it first came to me, they showed beds in there, and immediately I got a hold of the architect and says, you can't use this for residential use, since she's taken that out of there. So, from the street side, it looks very nice. It looks like a single-story detached garage. Obviously, this is an unusual case because of the way the topography is and the way the land drops off in the back. So that's one example.
So
Rob,
what's just curious, what's the dimension of that on each floor? Like, is it the same amount of floor space all the way up?
The second floor is a little bit less because you got the roof, but you have the dormers and stuff like that. It's under it's about 657, close to 700 square feet, which is a max we allow for a footprint of a garage, 700 square feet. So what you're seeing here is, about as big as we can go.
And did this house not have any garage before?
It had a detached garage. It was just a single story detached garage. It did have a basement below it, and they tore that garage down and rebuilt this, or in the process of rebuilding it.
And Patty, you can see on this view, the overall site plan view, this would be the basement level, the foundation plan. This is the first floor, and then the second floor, you can get an idea of the space involved.
Well, the other thing is that in 112504, we say that that the accessory buildings, including the detached garages, shall not exceed 700 square feet in total area. So the way we defined area of buildings in 110703A is that you would not count that second floor, or all you're counting is what's on the ground floor. So in that particular case, they would have had significantly more usable area than 700 square feet in that building, even though they might have complied with the calculations, maybe not the use. But that's where the issue got to our attention recently, so that when you take the area of all the buildings, accessory buildings on that property, you have to think about whether, now that we allow a 22-foot high accessory building, which we never did until the code was amended 2 years ago, that you normally didn't have to deal with this issue because you would only have a 1-story accessory structure. Now we can have 2 with ABR approval of the roof pitch.
With the roof, including oftentimes these dormers that, increase the head space such that, it's a lot more usable space would have been.
So the difference, though, just to clarify, Harry, is the second floor, because the original had the same footprint, had a basement, had the garage, two-car garage, I guess. But what's new, talking to kids, new is the second floor. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the other garage that was there, there was no second floor to it. So, and this is just one example. I've given 3 or 4 different examples of structures and stuff.
Can you quickly go through a couple others just so we can see what else?
Go ahead, Rob, scroll through 'em.
Okay. This is a different one, isn't it? Yep.
Yeah, this is a different one. Sorry, it's a little faded here, but in the center there, you see my dimensions. That's the front elevation. Very nice garage.
Can't see the number. What's the number on there?
There's a little carport off the left side. Yeah,
20,
scrolling my
20.
hand. It was like 20 feet, 6.
Okay.
So
Is
as you
this
see,
Church
the front's
Street?
very nice.
Harry, is this Church Street?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
I've seen it. Mhm. I wondered whether it was in code or not.
So did they add the
Yeah,
car,
it's a
are they
Church
using the
Street.
carport
So-
because they couldn't go any bigger?
They wanted to use the carport as to park there, and I kind of told them they couldn't do that. It wasn't part of the plan. So right now they're just using it like a picnic area or something. But there's nothing to say they couldn't pull a car in there
Sure.
at times. So scroll down a little bit, Rob. So this is the inside of that garage.
That's the first floor? Or there's only one floor on this?
That's the first floor.
Oh
there's
my,
no cars going into that garage? Well, they have a
No.
2-car garage or
that's
even
an
a,
They
apartment.
already have a garage, but this is what I'm getting at. This is the first floor.
it's a coach house. It's
It's
it's a coach house.
It's an apartment.
It's what
Yes.
people always built, actually. They built a coach house. Oh.
Is this the same house, Harry? The next
Yeah,
one?
it is. It's just the picture sideways. I don't have a picture of the second floor, but the second floor is also finished. And, it's conditioned space. It got split units in there for heating and air conditioning. That's in the back.
Plumbing,
There's plumbing in there.
full plumbing.
Well, there
Full
was full plumbing in the last one too. We just looked
Yeah.
at.
Right. There's
Yes.
water and sanitary sewer in them.
Yeah.
And what are they calling this on their application? What do they?
Accessory
call it?
structure.
what?
Accessory structure.
Accessory
So
structure.
they don't get into the use of
Use.
it.
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
Wow.
Have you said to them, Harry, you can't have, this can't be like a home, like a.
I've documented it, that it can't be used for residential use. They're fully aware of it.
So what do they say they're gonna do in there?
They understand. They're gonna use it for like kids, their kids to
Hang out,
have.
Cook meals and take showers?
Right,
have parties.
right.
Well, once it's done, I mean, how do you, I laugh
Exactly.
because it's sort of like the good kids get punished. The ones that put the beds on the plans, you go back and say you can't have a bed. The other, other people don't say that. And then, of course, that's, what goes in.
All I can do, Judy, is document it and like I
Of
told
course,
Bob,
that's
walk
my
away.
point. That's my point.
Yeah, once I walk away and
Yeah.
I've signed off on it, if it gets, if my comments get transferred to the next owner, who knows? But
Right.
it becomes a zoning enforcement.
Right.
Well, this is
It
another.
usually,
Go ahead, Dan.
it usually, it becomes an issue only when a neighbor complains about something.
Correct.
And then we become aware of it.
Right.
Right. But there's the ones that we all know about that have been there and are used as apartments.
Right. Rob, go back to the last page there.
It's unenforceable. None of it's enforceable.
Unenforceable.
It's completely unenforceable.
Right.
Why
So this is a small garage over on Walnut Street. Upstairs it's unfinished. It's storage. It's very well done. Good taste.
Mhm.
Okay, Rob, you can go to the next one. This one is over on Ridgewood, 103 Ridgewood. Same scenario. You have a garage on the first floor, but the second floor is completely done with a full bathroom, shower.
Is this the red one? It's a red garage?
Yes. Same thing. I tell them, I write it down, document it, So this is I'm just kind of letting you guys know, this is what I'm seeing out in the field.
Yeah.
Maybe nothing needs to be done, but I just want to bring it to your attention.
I mean, maybe people will say, oh, it's for like our once per year overnight guest, or it's for my teenage son, but it really sets up the situation for having it be 2 residences on one lot. Or even if that second residence is your in-laws, which would be lovely, or your out of college back home kid, or even if it's a member of the same family, it's probably somebody who's functioning as a
Wait, what was that one? That one's pretty.
This is on West Washington Street, 59 West Washington.
Oh, where? I don't know that. That's pretty. Well,
Is
there's
that-
also
It's off the alley.
on Washington. Well, there's also the one on Center Street that's gorgeous, but it was renovated coach house,
Right.
and it's been an apartment for decades. Like, it's gorgeous.
You're talking about the one behind Griffiths?
That's a separate house. That's
It-
got its own address.
Yeah, that's behind Griffiths. That has a separate address. That's a single family residential house.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
But this is on
But
West
it-
Washington.
It was a coach house. I mean,
Yeah.
originally, just like,
Yeah, but it's a separate lot. It's not the same thing as this.
got it.
So I guess the thought is, should these things should the area of your accessory structures count all the area of the livable or usable space, which in the case of the first one would include the basement, the first floor and the second floor. And in several of these others, the first and second floors.
But we don't use basements on regular houses as space, as lot coverage.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, we'd only be talking about, do you want to add the second floor to the calculation?
Okay.
The only way to limit this in the future is if you say that total 700 square feet includes all the area on both floors, then you're going to have less likely that they'll put in a second floor that's usable.
Correct.
Or else they'll get a variance. If they get a variance, then there's nothing you can do.
Or are we at a tipping point, honestly, that A, this is not enforceable, and B, the costs, the tax related costs to have homes in this village kind of make this something that maybe we should consider as allowable, and not just allowable to, I mean, are we at a tipping point where like every third lot already has one of these?
Yeah,
And
it looks like that might be the case.
and if every third lot has one, really, we're going to stop the other ones when we're all paying these inflated taxes that are very much like Shaker Heights? I mean, it's an interesting quandary to be in. They're tasteful. They're being regulated by the ARB to like that one that looks like a 3-story monster from the back. It looks like a nice single-story thing. I mean, maybe it's the ARB's management of this is the right way to go, rather than
Well, ARB is only looking at the aesthetics.
right. And maybe that's what we need to. Maybe that's what the village. I'm trying to figure out why not. I mean, coach houses were, people's families were living in coach houses for centuries. The spinster daughter or the in-laws or the whatever. And it is every third house, at least in my neighborhood now. Maybe this is something that shouldn't be such a burden for Harry to manage. Maybe it's okay. You've got it on your 700 square feet and you're doing this, you're putting in that huge amount of capital. And maybe it warrants the taxes that you're paying, this extra space to live in your walkable village.
I think the point is, we say that each lot should have no more than one residence.
Well, it's not a residence, it's an accessory structure.
No, it is a residence if it has every single feature that a residence would have. There's nothing to preclude it from being a residence. Maybe
It
the
can't be
people
sold
won't-
off. It can't be sold off as a residence. That's what makes it a I mean, it can't be sold. I mean, unlike apparently my neighbors, it's got a separate address and it can be sold.
but it
but,
could be rented.
Yeah. But I mean, like I was saying, that's happening every third house. The big house on Washington Street has $1 million accessory structure on 2 floors. And every owner of that house has been renting it for as long as I've lived here.
I mean, I
So-
know it's like there's a lot of these around, but
And
Harry, how many of these have popped up in the past year or two?
I'm probably seeing, and I don't have an exact count, but I bet you I'm seeing 1 to 2 per year. The 4 examples I've given you here are over the past couple of years.
Oh.
2 of them here, 3 of them here within the 2020.
Since
This one you're looking at's on East Washington.
the
So,
one on-
The
so
one
I'm,
up in North Street's under construction. The one down on Church Street was just finished in the summer of 2020. So there's 3 right there.
And the one on Ridgewood was done with that big house
Yeah, that one on a couple of years, that finished up last year.
last year. Yeah.
So
I don't-
my question would be how it impacts the neighbors in the neighborhood. And when you say every third house, and maybe in your neighborhood, that's the case. I don't think it is in my neighborhood. So what do how do you account for, let's say, a house with an attached garage that now, because they're allowed to put an accessory, because you're allowed to have an accessory structure, and I know it all has to do with, the mass and the coverage of the lot, but, do you encourage people who haven't had these before to think about doing them? And Nicole, I agree with you. I think the last year has taught us that people are living in different ways. But I just look at some of these, lots that look like they're just so crammed full of building. And, I think it is good that we talk about it and think about whether,
We should definitely talk.
yeah,
about it,
whether we think that's, good, bad, or indifferent. But I agree totally with Patty. The first thing I thought of was people be renting these out. And maybe that works on a 2-acre piece of property, with $1 million accessory, but maybe it doesn't work so well on most of our streets. So that's what I'm thinking about.
And then the renting or the selling
How does
is,
the height?
yeah. But the renting and the selling, maybe that's a little bit more enforceable than this.
Well, we've tried, we talked, I don't know if you were on the commission at the time, but we had a huge fracas about short-term rentals and ended
Oh,
up
no, I wasn't on there, but I heard about that.
deciding that, we should
Airbnb.
think about it, it's unenforceable, same sort of thing. And I think at some point, kind of like our discussion with home occupations, yes, we want to let people use their property and do what you want in your accessory structure in your home, but at some point, does it change? Does it impact the?
Well, and that's the other thing. I mean, I know I'm the thorn in everybody's paw on this commission, but home occupation probably should be revisited after this last year of COVID. Everybody is working from home, and we can't pretend that they're not going to continue to work from home. And to make Harry's job, irritating those people that, hey, you know what? Some of us have had to work from home 2 shifts to be able to keep our homes. So that probably is something we need to revisit, because the future of work is work from home. And if we want to keep affluent white collar workers paying these high property taxes and living in Chagrin Falls rather than moving to Solon or Hudson, then these things might need to be revisited. I know that everybody wishes I would just disappear, but it's
to talk about, but I don't think the white collar workers sitting at their computer is anything that we shot down before. It was customer
Okay.
based, like retail sort of operations or service operations where you'd
Mm-hmm.
have people coming and going. But anyways, let's stay, we can talk about that further at another meeting if you'd like to, but let's try to stay focused maybe on just this area idea.
And-
The other
and Patty,
Just as a disclaimer here before I forget, you see I marked this 23 feet high. This garage is not 23 feet high. They had to cut the top half off. They made a mistake on their trusses. So just so you understand, that garage is 22 feet high now, so.
So,
That's just
So-
a disclaimer. I just don't want somebody to think.
I was gonna ask.
Okay, so-
I was gonna ask,
yeah,
as I saw.
I was gonna call you on that one, Aaron.
So, but the reason I wanted to give you this example of a picture is you can see, nice garage. This is before it's all finished, but you see how much space they got upstairs. Now this is storage space. At least it was when I left.
Right,
It's all finished, and that's just a loft up there for storage. But you can see how easy it could be for somebody to take that and convert that into conditioned space, living space. So.
Mhm. Mhm.
well, the one that you showed us before with the wood floors and the pretty paint, it's,
So,
Well, they have a 3-car attached garage, the one that he showed before.
good for them.
correct. Yeah, which is attached, which is
So
okay.
this was never going to be a garage, ever. So I don't know.
It's a tough one. It's a
It is.
very tough subject. And like I told Rob, I just want you guys to be aware, maybe we need to look at our total area calculation. But that's all I'm doing. We could dwell on this all night long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the other thing about just the area, I think the area changes potential uses and the utilities that are allowed in there changes potential uses. The height and these dormers sticking out the side kind of impact the neighbors in terms of just mass, I think, which we talked about long ago with like McMansionization and, houses getting bigger, everybody wanting, deeper a usable basement and the 10-foot ceilings or whatever, and just getting much more massive in scale. And how do you control that? So same with these, like if you had the exact same footprint, but a 18-foot tall building, without multiple dormers coming off the roof, I think it would look very different. And, I don't know if, we're going to regulate things on how it looks or feels in the neighborhood, but that can have sort of a negative impact, I think, as well, is, just having this, sort of a massive structure, instead of sort of a small quaint structure.
Right.
Do-
The other thing is with the dormers,
Mhm.
they're getting around our code a little bit because the code says from the finished garage floor to the top of the plate, which is the top of the wall, cannot exceed 10 feet. So when you start putting dormers in there, they actually come in a little bit, and it circumvents the code a little bit. So
It just makes Harry's job tough.
And I think, when we were talking, and we did talk at great length about this and the mass of the buildings, and I don't think we contemplated when we did the whole thing, which you mentioned somewhere in these notes that you sent about the pitch, allowable height for the roof pitch. I think we were very focused on that issue of roof pitch and aesthetics and all that, and never even thought about, what was gonna come out of it.
Has commissions or have we ever asked the constituents? Like not just the ones that are building them, but all the neighbors or poll everybody and say, hey, what are your thoughts on secondary structures? What are your thoughts on 5-car garages or like things before we make decisions or, create new and more constricting rules or even let up on some of the rules that are not enforceable? And
I can guarantee that everybody would vote in favor for it when it's something they want to do on their property. But when it's their neighbor with a very close property line and not a lot of space to work with, and it means losing some trees that the neighbor loves or whatever, they'd be very much against it. It's a very,
So what percentage is who's who? How many's in what camp and how many's in the other camp? And maybe that's some, at least it's food for thought. Like, rather than,
what I'm saying.
I feel that 5 women on this commission creating rules for however many thousands of constituents that pay high property taxes to be here, I think we might be making some decisions in a vacuum. And I think we represent more than just the 5 of us.
Well, I can tell.
How we get around.
And like you said, you're right.
I can tell you from history, Nicole, back in
Yeah.
2005, maybe a little bit sooner, we had a dust up over on East Orange Street
Mhm.
where the detached garage was built, and the neighbors came out of the woodwork. They thought that was way too big.
Orange Street.
Mhm.
Well,
And that's how some of our regulations became today. What we have today is what came out of that, but
Because that was, wasn't that it was 18 feet instead of 15 or something?
yeah, it used to be the garage height was 15 feet high.
but then since then we've made it 22. So
We only made it
But I
22.
think when we made
The
it 22, we weren't and we had a lot of discussion, but we weren't contemplating, gee, now it's gonna, and so many of the things we do, you know, it's like an inch, and now suddenly you have a second structure on a property. So Nicole, I think that's what, you know, I'm not pro or con either side, and I
Yeah,
don't
me neither.
live where a bunch of you live, where a lot of this happens all the time. My neighborhood's pretty static, but except for front porches, everybody wants front porches. But I just think that, you know, sometimes we do things, and even when we talk about them for weeks and months, and then 6 months later, we figure out that there was an unintended consequence of something that we did. And when I was reading the 14 pages of notes that I read that were sent to us, and thank you, Harry and Dale and Julie and Rob, because that was really helpful. But as I was reading through, I was thinking, boy, this isn't what we were thinking, you know, we just weren't thinking of this. So I think it is a great idea to take a step back.
Yeah, and it's a great example of how,
Maybe wasn't a good idea. Or maybe it should be, you know, 22 and people can live there, whatever. But it's really, you know,
The
up
other
to
thing you
us
gotta
to
remember-
lead that conversation with our council. I would love to hear from Dale and from Julie and some of the people, Nancy, people we haven't heard from.
Mhm.
The other thing you gotta remember is not every garage has to be 22 feet high. The ARB is supposed to govern that based on the predominant roof pitch of the main building.
Right.
So, you know, you're seeing these down in the older section of town where you've got your more steeper roof pitches, smaller lots.
Mhm.
I think that's where you're seeing a lot of these taller garages, so.
Taxes have doubled down here too, by the way.
So,
And your lot didn't double. So
well, you can thank the schools on the taxes.
I know we can, but it's
So-
worth it. I
so what
hope.
you're saying is ARB should be a little bit more strict in saying, you know, this, you need to make this match the pitch of your existing home roof and.
I think that's what they're doing,
Yeah,
right?
I think they look at it. I wouldn't blame the ARB. I think this is what, you know, they're looking at, because they've told applicants, I think that's too high of a pitch, and they've reduced
Okay.
it like that, so.
So they're doing that.
It has come up, yes.
So I do want to hear from Julie, because I know there was a question of whether this is even, if there's something that could be a building code way to deal with this rather than zoning, because we already have stated there shouldn't be more than one residence. And I presume that would have to do with putting in utilities. Is that correct? Or Julie? do you
Well,
wanna-
that would be a council policy, just like all of these issues really. are guided by council and their policy. Council, probably separate from zoning, could decide how utilities are served to a lot. And if single family zoning means there's only one utility service to a lot, then that could be a council policy. I think Dale may have some comment on that as well. But I think there's some zoning changes. For one, I really don't think we contemplated, or the code didn't contemplate when they based the 700 square foot on a footprint, that there would be a second story on an accessory structure. So I think
I could have told you that.
counting all of that area would be appropriate. And perhaps even, doing away with some of this 22 feet thing, because as soon as someone reads 22 in the code, even though there's only one standard for allowing 22 feet, which is architecturally matching the roof pitch, the architect sees 22 feet and then he designs something that's 22 feet.
Yep.
So those could be some issues. I think we can work hand in hand. Mostly, I think one of the questions would be, is it council's, does council support the idea of having these secondary dwellings in a single family zoning district? And if they support that, then I think that would guide us in how we write any regulations about it. Our code right now, if you want to have a 2-family dwelling, or if you want to have one family, you have to do a lot split, and you have to provide a minimum square footage of the lot. You have to have the setbacks. You have to have a driveway serving that building. That building has to be served by its own garage. We have all of these requirements for single family dwellings in the single family zoning district. So if you're going to add another dwelling unit, how is that structured? Do we need to write up regulations allowing secondary dwelling units? Does the community support that or not? Some communities do. I mean, it's a granny flat, mother-in-law suite, those kind of, some communities that try to support affordable housing, they allow that. So it is a common thing in some communities, but without knowing a policy from council, it may be hard for us to move in a particular direction comfortably.
Yeah.
I can tell you there's a real issue too when you look at regulating through utilities. I was talking with Harry about this, and we talked about the 3 main utility. I mean, electricity would be very, that would of course go to just a plain garage versus something with livable space. But when we talk about sanitary service, gas, natural gas, and water service, those are all things that could be used in a regular garage. With the storm regulations the way they are, they want you to wash your car over a drain that goes to a sanitary sewer. So if you are washing your car in your garage, if it was an attached garage, that drain would have to go to a sanitary sewer. So if it
Just
was
like
a
a-
detached garage, we'd want to have that go to a sanitary sewer as well. Natural gas can be used for heaters as needed at times in garages. And also the water service for if you wanted to have a garden hose to wash off your mower, wash off your car, things like that. So we talked about what if we limited any of those utilities, and we saw that there might be some pushback on that too, based on just general uses of a garage. So just things to think about.
I saw one thing that I think Harry suggested it might be possible to allow the drain to be just outside the garage door, like one of the bar kind of drains.
The trench drain.
Off drain.
So I don't know how many people actually wash their car inside their garage. My garage is.
I don't wash my car at all.
Who does it inside the garage? I think saying you need to allow sanitary service to these buildings that clearly aren't even designed to be used as a garage at all to ever see a car. I don't, to me, like, having a home office or having a hangout space for your kids or a bonus room that some of these older houses don't have is one thing. I think it's when you put in a kitchen and a bathroom that it's different. That for that one you showed, it looked like there's cabinetry installed.
Right.
It had the blue walls, the first floor. That looks very much like it's gonna get
A
countertop.
hot water heater.
The one we all want to move into.
Yeah, it's gonna be my home.
There we
Um,
go.
Anyway,
In my house.
I feel like a voyeur because I walk when I do my walks. I walk by this house and I'm like,
Yeah.
wonder what it looks like on
Yeah.
the inside. Now I know.
Well, you could probably rent it, so you could
yeah,
find.
I'll probably go rent it.
Julie, our code does state,
Solve
right,
my problem.
only that there can only be one dwelling unit or residence per lot in a single family district.
It
Is that
says one main building.
One main building and one
And-
and
and-
accessory structures.
Hold on. And then the only permitted use for residential is as a main use.
okay? And then in
building.
our accessory structures,
They're regulated under that other section 1125.
right, but uses do not include as a residence.
Right, exactly. And we say that very clearly, I think several times in many different ways. And again, these secondary units kind of inject, I mean, if you're going to have a second main building and a second dwelling unit, I mean, the logical conclusion of that is they should do a lot split and divide
Yeah.
off and then have another dwelling unit. When we know people aren't going to do that, but you're basically rewarding a system of putting a second unit. It's really not a relieving hardship. They're getting a special privilege by being able to put a second dwelling unit on a lot that would not otherwise allow a second dwelling unit, just spatially, just,
Right.
Just by the numbers, even if you wanted to, their lot wouldn't be big enough to meet the requirements for a lot split and all of that. So, and, in some ways, I don't think a person that does this ever goes, oh, I'm going to circumvent the single family second dwelling unit and that kind of thing. But just from a zoning logic, a second dwelling unit in a single family district is supposed to be on its own lot and meet the requirements of the single family district. That would be why, if you wanted to allow it, I would recommend that you have a special category for a secondary dwelling unit, not treat it like an accessory building or not like a separate single family unit, but call it an accessory dwelling unit. If that would be the way people would want to go.
Well, should we ask council, since they're, more representatives, of
The people.
And I don't know, Julie, could you write up like a summary of the situation? I mean, we've had it this way for a very long time. Yes, you can say there were carriage houses where the coachman lived, or, the maid or whatever back in the 1800s, but we've had it for quite some time that there's been only one residence allowed, and that their residential use is not a permitted use for an accessory structure. So is there a way to present this sort of concisely to council? Say, we're seeing a lot of this. Do you feel like this is no big deal or not? Does that seem, then it's not just us saying what we think or trying to decide what we think. After that, depending what they say, if they do want to try to regulate it in some way, then we have to come up with how to do that. Is it by incorporating the second story in total area? Or talking about the roof again, or talking about utilities?
Yeah. Do people do that, Julie? Like, do they go and ask the taxpayers what they would prefer and utilize that in their decision-making? Councils or commissions like us do?
I think it's an appropriate question for your council rep. Nancy hasn't spoken up.
Yeah, Nancy?
That's usually the conduit towards policies, is to go to your elected officials.
Well, so first of all, I think that and most of you, Patty was on the board when we raised the roof pitch, but the actual maximum height is 18 feet. I don't remember why we are allowing up to 22 feet, but I think that if we eliminated that and just had an 18-foot, which was the original intent and the original basic thought process when we raised this, and we only did this maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago or so.
I think it's
To allow
18, but
only
up to 22 is allowed with additional setback or something, maybe?
It has to
They
do
don't
with
have the
the
code right in
main
front of me.
building.
Correct.
right?
Is that correct, Harry?
Once you get over the 18-foot mark, then your setbacks are gonna start increasing by 1 foot for the side and rear yard of the building. And
Right,
to
but we
answer
don't
your
have to, but we don't have to allow that. I don't remember, Julie, maybe Julie has notes from back then, but the basic, if you look at the code, the section is it's 18 feet. We used to, the garage height was 15 feet. We raised it to 18 feet so that you didn't have all these little squat roof garages. I think that what we probably need to do is bring it back to maybe 20 feet at the most. And the only reason for doing that is to match the roof pitch. We could just take all that out and just go to the basic 18 foot, which is what the basic code is.
Oh, if this is the problem, if this is a prevalent problem for all, a majority.
It isn't a problem. It's
Oh,
something that we
taxpayer.
created not that many years ago.
It was
because-
2014, I'm looking at it.
2014.
Okay, it wasn't that many years ago. And we did that because the people were building roofs and they had a flat squat roof pitch because 15 feet isn't giving you very much of a roof pitch. So we made it 18 feet. I don't remember where we came up with those extra 4 feet, but I think that if we took that away, it would get rid of most of this problem because you wouldn't have so much room on the upper level of this accessory building garage.
Oh, okay.
Judy,
I think that's what we need to look at again. And like I say, I don't remember why we.
right.
Yeah, I'm looking, it's 11/25/04,
6A.
04, 6.
Okay.
It should be on the screen right now if you can see
But
it.
there's no decision to be made now, like, well, let's quickly have a knee-jerk reaction and reverse something we made in
I
2014.
don't think it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's
I don't think it's,
considering something that we only did not that many years ago. I
May-
don't exactly call this knee-jerk. This is
May,
not what we intended when we did that rule,
may I say something?
for people to have this ability to do that. The whole intent of this rule was to have a more attractive building and a
Right.
better pitch to the roof for a detached garage. It was not intended to allow people to build giant structures like this. So I don't see it as knee-jerk. I think it's something that we should revisit that section of the code.
possibly.
Back up that.
May I say something?
I went,
Hi, sorry I was late. I had another meeting. I was on BZA when we were having issues with the 15-foot height of the garages because some of the homes had these short and squatty garages that they found unattractive and they were probably built after a barn or something of that sort had been raised. And so they wanted to bring in something more attractive. I think one of the first ones was on Orange Street and the other one was on Ridgewood Road. And there was a lot of debate about these properties. And so they decided to change the design, allow for people to have something that was more in keeping with the type of design they had, more in keeping with the design of their house. And yes, I agree with Nancy in that the original intent was not so that people can build secondary spaces. It was just to give you more than a short and squatty hip roof garage that looked like something out of 1940. So that's all I have to say.
yes, I don't know.
Let me make a comment here.
Yes.
Actually, there's two points I'd make. I think the concern about having a second floor used and turning it into another dwelling, you could change our language here and say that either you can't have a second floor or the second floor can't be used other than for, say, storage, if that's what you're concerned about. But the other thing I would say to you is that you got to think about the mass of the structure, because now you're talking about somebody could come in and say they've got 1,400 square feet and they'd say, I only have 700 feet on the ground floor. I'd like to have a couple hundred more feet, and the Board of Zoning Appeals would likely grant it. So now they've got 900 square feet on each floor or 1,800 square feet, and you're getting to have a significant accessory building. So you have to decide from a policy point of view, is that something that you find appropriate for a community that's mostly small lots that are, jammed up against each other? Maybe you do. I don't, it could be 2 or 3 of you on this board might have your garages like that. If Nicole's right and 1 out of every 3, that means maybe 2 of you have it.
We're the 5 that don't.
but you have to decide, is this, if in fact your concern is simply avoiding, more people residing there. We already say in subsection 7 that no portion of the accessory building can be occupied for residential use. But the problem is, as you know, we don't know who's doing it or not, if they built something like Harry's first drawing. But if you said that you can't even build a second floor, or you can't have a stairway up to a second floor, or something where, you can't do anything other than have storage, and you'd have to have like a little ladder going up there, I think that might discourage most, but not all people from occupying that second floor.
Well, I know when I first moved here, I was told that I couldn't have stairs to the second, what is, I guess, the second floor of my garage. And it isn't anywhere near as big as these things. And I was told that I couldn't have a stairway up to the second floor.
I don't know.
What would prohibit that, Harry?
Nothing. There was discussion
Years ago, but I remember that.
There was discussion during the East Orange Street project about eliminating stairs, but then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, it was put back in the code or forgotten about. So, now we allow people to put stairways in. Maybe eliminate the steps and just have a pull down hatch.
Harry,
Yes.
and I'm sorry, I'm coming in late, so I may say something that's already been said, but doesn't the sanitary sewer line also impact
Yes, it does.
this where people are, because now they can, I know that when we built our garage, we couldn't put a sanitary sewer line in, not that we wanted to, but
No, I think that's a key difference. I think personally, I think having a second floor is not an issue. I think it's, for me, well, it is the mass. How big does the building have to be to get a second floor? But you could have stairways up to a second floor in a building that's not crazy. And I think that would be okay. To me, Wendy, it's when you add a kitchen and a bathroom.
Mhm.
And I think it would be onerous. I think it would be like overstepping to say, or it just doesn't make any sense to say, you can build this structure, you can have this footprint, and it's got a gabled roof with this amount of floor space, but you're not allowed to go up there except with a pull down stair, like an attic. It just seems wasteful. Like you might as well use that space, right? But I don't agree that like it could be an Airbnb or another kind of rental or another family living there. So I do, what Nancy says is true, that we just added this in, and adjusting the height would solve both problems that Dale talked about. It would solve the mass issue. Well, it would help the mass issue, and it would also reduce the amount of usable space you would have. So you would still be able to have a home office or maybe a little workout space or a place for your kids to hang out and play games, but you wouldn't have a dwelling. Or the
Back
other
to our agenda, on that agenda item of area, I think it's critical that the 700 square feet be total area, not just total ground floor area.
Total.
Well, then you're not going to have.
And I think it's written that way because it wasn't ever really contemplated that someone would have a second floor. So just applying the 700 feet to the ground floor area may have made sense at one time, but now we're seeing that I think that 700 square feet needs to be total dimensions of all floors, and all floors meaning, the way we define that, which probably would not be a basement.
Again, to be the thorn in everybody's side, we're not certain that's not what our taxpayers want, especially
Right.
in the historic district. So we keep
Of
talking about,
course.
well, that's the problem. Let's figure out how to control. And the thing is, you know what? Maybe because our taxes are what they are, and every third house in certain districts have them already. I mean, really, we're going to really say no, everybody else, you can't.
Hey, Nicole, just, Harry said,
I'm repeating myself because everybody's coming up with reasons to constrain. And we
no, I
had,
wanted to say that Harry told us that he's probably seen 4 of these come through in the past couple of years. So I think your representation that it's every third house can't possibly.
I could count every third house in my neighborhood. And they haven't been just in the last 4 years. They've been, it's a part of the way
Don't you live a house away from me, Nicole?
it's. I live 2 houses from you. And White House on Washington has one of these. The one on Church Street is a stone's throw from my house. There's
Nicole.
another one on, I mean, they're all over the place. They're all Maple. They're all over the place. And this is, again, we have gone through a pandemic where people are working from home to survive. There's a lot of things that we need to consider, and not just from our little glass houses that we live in.
I just don't think you need to have a kitchen and a full bathroom in order to work from home in an accessory structure. If you're
Again, that can't be enforced, though. Then we've got the enforcement issue. Poor Harry can't say, okay, yeah, this looks good. Walk out of the building and then somebody put a kitchen in. It's not.
Yes, you can enforce
enforceable.
that. Yes, you
Wait a
can.
minute.
If the
cannot
will
have-
is there, it can be.
Hold on.
enforced.
You cannot have a home office in the garage.
But everybody
The
has them.
let me finish. The home occupation stats or ordinances only allow it in the house,
Right.
not in the garage.
So
Now,
100%
Nicole,
of the village
let-
residents are
Nicole,
following that rule right now because of COVID. I am
Let me
working in my
finish.
home office
Ma-
right now
Nicole.
in my house.
Nicole, quiet for a minute, please. What you said at the very beginning of the meeting was because of COVID, we ought to revisit home occupations, and I agree. I think you should, because this gentleman who had that really nice garage that we wanted to, that he wanted to have the 2 floors on, he was told you cannot have an accessory home occupation there. And he didn't want to work at his office anymore. He wanted to work at home. His wife wanted to work at home. So they claim they're going to do a workaround inside the house, which who knows? It may or may not.
Baloney.
No,
But
I-
I somebody's dying in the background there. But I think we should talk about the home occupation at another meeting, because it could take a whole night just talking about that.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important point here, because you have to think about, if you're going to allow home occupations to be in an accessory building, then I think you have to allow a second floor, and you're going to have to allow the structures to be
22
measured
feet.
so that they can be 22 feet, and you can't limit it to 700 square feet on 2 floors.
Exactly.
That wouldn't work.
Right, so that's why my term knee-jerk reaction, we need to think about this holistically. We need to think about this before we just start making regulations, because we're seeing a change in the desires of the homeowners of our village. And I totally appreciate Harry bring this to our attention, because I think this is information telling us what people want, what people expect to be able to do with the money that they pay for these houses, and the taxes that we're paying. That's why I think more than just 5 women on a commission should be making these decisions, and we can't make them in vacuums. We can't just talk about the house pitch or the 22 feet versus, like Dale said, we need to talk about this as holistically. We can't just change the pitch and think, okay, now we got this under control. Because it may not need to be under control, and B, the massing, if ARB is approving things, they're doing it aesthetically, and mass is considered an aesthetic attribute.
Not for that point.
But they make
won't.
decisions about massing. They stopped eight
Of course,
Water Street
but-
from,
but if somebody wanted 22 feet and they'd say, oh, well, now it's going to be 1,400 square feet, they'd say, that's right, that's what your code contemplates. So the ARB couldn't turn them down on that basis. Well, when I first heard one of you suggest we ought to ask council, I didn't think it was a good idea because that's your job. You're supposed to make recommendations. But I think that it's clear to me that this should probably not only go back to council, but we ought to think about maybe putting something on the website
and
and
reaching out.
asking the residents to, survey the residents and say, what do you all think? Because I think it's a key component of the future character of this village that ought to be looked at and listened to.
And I agree with that. And I think it's to Nicole, to take Nicole's point about you can't just do it in a vacuum. And we spent years on this zoning code going back and forth because it's so difficult to do, because every time you do something over here, then you have to think about, what it does over there. But I would say, and if council is willing to do that and to put something on the website, and I like the idea of thinking about the future character of the village. And if we turn it around, instead of going from the minute to the broad, if we go from the broad to the minute and say, if we're thinking about the future character of the village, what are some of the kind of things? And one of them might be home occupations. But I certainly think this issue of mass, which in my view hasn't usually been totally handled at the ARB level, and a lot of it comes back to the zoning. I remember, I don't remember the details of this discussion or why we chose 22 feet instead of, it was 15, it was 18, but I know it wasn't this that we were contemplating. So I think this whole question of mass of the buildings which we talk about all the time with setbacks, and can we put kitchens out in the back, and can we put what can we put in accessory structures? I just think it's part of a bigger conversation. If council is willing to contemplate that with the village, could be a great way to engage the community. But it's not just these just happen to be the questions that came up this day. And I think it's a bigger question of how people are going to live and use their houses. But also, I keep coming back to this. I guess we all keep repeating our points, but the mass to me is very important in enjoyment of your own property and what you buy, what you choose to buy when you go to look at a house. And I think some of these, as we have talked about the McMansionization very often in this group, I think that's a concern, because I think that changes the character of the village. So I think it's it's a bigger question than the ones that happen to come up today.
But one of the issues on the area is that I do think our definition of area of a building in 1107 is not the correct definition for area of a building.
Yeah.
As it limits your calculation to the ground floor. And that really is footprint or coverage, really not the floor area of a building. And if you look at we have that definition twice in our code. One is in 1107 and one is in 1141 in the parking. So if you see that definition in the parking, that is a more common and appropriate definition than you see in what we have in 1107. But 1107 kind of governs everything because it's in the general definition section. And I believe that it's not the right definition to use when we measure the area of a building, because it doesn't contemplate mass. It only contemplates coverage.
So in chapter 1125, in 1125.04, then you'd want to say the floor area rather than the area of the building.
Well, we do also define dwelling unit area, but we don't have a comparable way to talk about buildings that aren't dwelling units. Everything
Right.
that floor area. And I think that's been one of the challenges for Harry and Rob.
Yes, on 112504A2, you'd be saying that the accessory buildings and structures, including detached garages, shall not exceed 700 square feet in floor area rather
Right.
than total area.
Well, I mean, if yes, and then that would go back. It's kind of strange in our definitions because you can see our definition of coverage just takes you right back to the area of the building. So they're basically the same definition. And I'm just saying that I think area of a building, when you want to deal with mass, should include all the floors of a building.
Julie, so you're saying for the main dwelling, we don't look at total floor area, we only look at footprint?
We do look at total floor area because we define dwelling unit area.
Okay, but
And you-
that's
Right.
not a limiting factor in any of our regulations, is it?
I
And
don't think so.
This is like going back to like Solon Road.
Well, we do have a minimum dwelling unit area that you're supposed to have.
Right. No, but I mean, in terms of how big a house can be, I know there was
That's limited by coverage and we'd only.
coverage, setbacks, all of that.
Right,
Because
right.
there was talk about having livable floor space area as having a maximum in terms of trying to get to mass. But
And I'm not saying that you you change your regulatory system.
No,
I'm just saying you change this definition to be more consistent with what is more common in planning practice for the area of a building definition. But what I believe I talked with Rob and Harry about it, and I said, what we should do if we do that, and Dale as well, and you probably saw that in the emails, is kind of track through our code every time we talk about area and if it is as a measurement standard, and then make sure that the measurement standard we're using is the proper one, whether it's gross or whether it's dwelling unit area, because dwelling unit area is basically floor area, except we've netted out some elements like your closets and some of those things. And so do we really mean total floor area like that definition in parking? We use total floor area for all floors for parking. So what I would like to do if we want to pursue this, if we feel like there's the will to do anything with this, I would like to kind of correct that definition. And even if it means adding one or two other definitions and maybe run that through the code and make sure that we're actually, when we use a term in the code, it actually refers back to something that we define and that has that connection, if that makes sense.
yeah. One question I had for Harry was if we had so right now you're supposed to have an 18-foot maximum for a garage.
Yes.
Unless the architecture of the main building, in order to match that, you need to go higher, according to your architect. So if you had a standard 2-car garage with an 18-foot tall peak, is there enough room to have a usable second floor?
It would all depend on the pitch of the roof, and that's going to dictate how much area you get up there. The building code says to have habitable space, you need to have a ceiling height of 7 feet minimum.
Okay, so if you have 10-foot sidewalls and the peak is at 18.
Yeah, you're not going to, you won't have a 10-foot sidewall with an 18-foot high garage. Not with the roof.
Okay,
So it's almost in that case, the smaller the footprint, the greater foot area, ability to have a space above it would be if you're limited by the 18 feet.
I'm just saying with the 18-foot height and a regular 2-car garage, you could still probably get a second floor that would be useful in terms of sitting there with your computer or having a hangout space or whatever, or storage. It's not completely prohibiting having any use of that space, but it would prohibit having a second dwelling.
It would really cut down on the limit, the floor area or the conditioned space.
Right. Which, if that's what we're trying to do, that would accomplish it. And my only other thing I wanted to say at this point is that if you're gonna start adding in the square footage of the second floor and you've got your roof peak like this, are you gonna go all the way, over here in the corners? That's not usable space for anything. So like, where do you count? Would you say where the roof is at, like 4 or 5 feet off the floor? You start counting that?
Your knee walls are gonna be between 5, and now I'm getting into the building code here, and I don't
Yeah.
want to mix the zoning and building up, but building code says, knee walls 5, I think the minimum is 5 foot, so you can't be less than 5 foot.
Okay, so then you would just count the floor space between the knee walls.
Right.
Okay,
Which I say, it's really gonna cut down.
because I think if we do anything about adding in the second floor to the square footage, we might need to revisit that 700 square foot number, because so we have a garage. It's a very small 2-car garage. We can barely fit our cars in through the doors. There's no space, it's an old style 2-car garage. And we pushed up the roof. I can't remember what it was before, and I don't remember what it is now. But we were at the 700 square foot limit. We couldn't expand the garage footprint at all because we were at the limit just with an old style 2-car garage. So we didn't do anything, and we have an acre lot. So it's not, overwhelming the lot or anything. So 700 square feet is not all that generous, I guess, when you think about if you're going to incorporate both floors. Because if you're incorporating both floors, then that means you could really only have the footprint of a 1-car garage.
Right.
So, which I don't think most people would want, and it probably wouldn't look great. So, and then I like the idea of polling the people, or at least polling council members. I think it'd be a little hard to explain the whole situation to, in a quick and easy way on the website and get meaningful responses. Like anything, you're probably going to get people respond. It's like people reviewing products online. They're going to be the people that love them or hate them. So you'd probably get responses from, people that, are really pro one way or the other.
But if our village council goes to their constituents, all of them, and say, hey, we need to know what you want.
Right. And I think most people vote for the council members. I think most of us know a little bit, like, okay, I know, Jim thinks this way. I know Nancy kind of thinks this way. She's a little bit more, this way or that way. And you can sort of gauge if people are more, pro property rights or pro, historical preservation or that sort of thing. So, that's how we don't poll everybody about every issue, I guess is what I'd like to say is, it would be even more complex than, I'm not saying I don't want to do what the people want, but to poll the village and expect to get meaningful data, for this particular issue versus some other seems, I don't know, kind of unusual that we would start doing that unless we're going to start doing it for everything.
I think if we're going to poll them on the additional space, we should also poll them on Airbnbs.
Right. So that would be part of it. You'd have to explain all the facets of it, that this could affect, the mass of a structure next to you. This could affect the use, that you could have another family living there, that you could have a short-term rental, that, like what are all the implications of this? So that, so I agree. Yes, Wendy, that would have to be part of it. Which again, when the whole Airbnb thing was going down, everybody thought it was a great idea to be able to have people come in for the film festival or whatever and have a place to stay. And it's fun to, we go to Airbnb, we use Airbnbs, but then you think about the house next door being an Airbnb and you've purchased your home in a single family residential district, expecting to know your neighbors and have like kind of a community neighborhood feel. And yet, there's a new group in there every weekend. It gives it a different feel. So, again, I think it's very subjective how people would voice their opinion depending upon what the specific situation is and who's doing it, them versus their neighbor. So I don't know what the plan to move forward with this is.
Why don't we have Nancy report back to council next Monday night? See what they want to weigh in on, and if they want to submit it to informal survey on the website, and then report back to you at the February Planning Commission meeting.
Is that okay with you, Nancy?
Sure.
Sounds good. Can't hear you, Wendy.
Sorry. Nancy, do you want us to send some of our thoughts to you? I mean, my concern is always unintended consequences of our actions. So, I think we all need to think long and hard about all these great ideas and our things that we want to allow, and then also think about the unintended consequences of that movement in that direction.
Nancy, do you think we should sit on this and think about it and think about all the ramifications and possible ways to deal with it before presenting it to council, so you have a little bit more structured kind of presentation? Or are you feeling like it'd be good to weigh in with them at this point?
You mean the ramifications of the garage height issue?
Well, not just garage height, but if you count the total floor area, if you're going to measure both floors, if you're going to allow bathrooms and kitchens, if you're,
I think I think measuring an area, that's getting way too much into the weeds for council to think.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I think that, the policy question is, do we want to allow accessory structures built in a way that can accommodate a second dwelling? Whether we regulate it through area or height or whatever, but that's the question is.
I know, but that's real. It's not permitted. There's 2 places in the code that clearly say you can't do that.
Right. The question is, should we be changing that because that's antiquated, or, people are doing it anyways, or just leave it alone and some people are going to bend the rules to fit their needs anyways?
Change it to allow 2 dwellings on a property?
The potential for 2 dwellings on a property.
Well, potential is, I mean, if you allow it, you allow it. Is that the question? You.
I think what Harry's brought up, Nancy, is that we are allowing it. It's happening now. It's happened in the past. It happened more than 100 years ago.
Well, we don't know if it's happening now. Like, none of these new accessory structures have been shown to be housing another family or renters or anything. But, the fact that they're being built the way they are opens that possibility.
Basically, I'm telling you, the writing is on the wall.
Right. So if we.
But it's been on the wall.
If we think there's no problem with that, then we keep letting them be built the way they're happening. If that's a concern and we don't like the writing that's on the wall, what can we change in the code to reduce the likelihood that that's going to come to pass? And it would be changing the area definition, maybe making the height a little bit tighter, things like that.
Harry, have neighbors complained about these examples that we've brought to us today?
Not on all of them, no. There have been some concerns from neighbors with certain detached garages, but most of the stuff is just information that
I mean, other than Nancy, who's anybody complained?
Say that.
That's how the whole thing started
I'm teasing.
on Orange Street.
I'm teasing you.
No, but at Orange Street, the thing
Orange
brought up,
Street, there was a big dust up over.
But that was before, that was like, how many
Yeah.
years ago?
Yeah, it was a while. It was 2003, something like that.
Okay, so that was even before this change. So the orange, I don't think we can count as a huge thing, but like, has there
No.
been
Yeah, like I said, there's
about
been
this massing neighbors saying,
questions raised about garage heights, from residents and stuff, but
probably
nothing-
but is it out of envy? Hey, like Nancy said, I was told I couldn't have a staircase in my garage, and now all these people have these staircases and bathrooms and
No, there was just concern about using it as a second place of residence. And I've also gotten calls, people, from residents asking, can I use my detached garage for a VBRO or whatever, the Airbnb? And the answer is no. Can I use my detached garage for residential use for an in-law suite? Answer is no. So, I mean,
Right.
people are asking questions.
they're asking if they can do this. They're not asking why
not
are they doing
complaining.
that.
They're not-
They're asking if they can because they're looking for ways to take care of their aging parents or in-laws, and they're looking for ways to afford their properties. They're looking for ways to pay for property taxes. But people aren't calling and saying, hey, that thing on Church Street is blocking the view of my favorite tree. Are people complaining is my question.
No, I mean, like I said, I get complaints, but for me to go over 21 years of doing this,
yeah, I think there's some on both sides, right?
there's been people asking questions, but
Asking questions.
Okay.
Wait. I don't think we're gonna have a lot of in-law suites on the second floor.
No,
No.
not on a second floor. No.
So the argument that we're caring for our parents, they're not gonna be up in the garage on
Many
the
of the
second floor.
examples we saw were a lot of first floor.
Yeah, one of the examples of a detached garage, Wendy, was completely finished on the
First
first floor.
I'm
as
sorry.
Not, it was drywalled and cabinetry. and It's not,
Cabinetry, beautiful hardwood.
yeah,
Here.
like that's the first,
That's a first floor.
like that you would pull into with your car.
Where's the garage?
They have a 3-car attached garage.
Okay.
So it's clearly, this is not,
It's an in-law suite, or it's whatever it is. It's an accessory structure within our code right now, and this is why Harry's brought this stuff to our attention. This is one of many, and people are calling and saying, "Hey, can
Is
I?"
this an existing or is this a mock-up? It looks
That's a new one.
existing.
that's a new garage.
You can come walking around with me. I'll show you my neighbors.
Wait a minute, it's not a garage. This is not a,
This is a
it's an
dwelling.
accessory,
It's an,
No.
It's a dwelling.
it's an accessory
Structure.
building.
it's an
where they're-
accessory structure.
Yeah, it's not, you don't have to have a garage.
It's a coach house, Wendy, in the true sense of the word. It's a coach house
It's a,
Oh,
it's a,
without
it's
a
a
coach.
playhouse.
without a couch. It's a playhouse. It's a playhouse.
It's a man cave, maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
I think we beat this thing to death.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think you're right. You're right.
Nancy,
I know this.
Nancy, what do you prefer to do? Do you want to talk to council about this at all, or do you feel like it's not, like we need to distill this down to some kind of nutshell of what the question is? Because I agree, I don't think you can go to council and talk about the height is 18 except for 22 if it matches the pitch, and we've got this footprint and we've got this total area. I think it's going to be really hard to I think we need to ask them what the policy position is. And in order to do that, we have to know what the policy question is.
Well, what is, yeah, it would be a policy question, not the details. I certainly don't think that that's a conversation council would be interested in having. But so what's the exact policy that you want to?
I guess, what are the allowed uses in an accessory building?
Well,
Given the changes in the economy,
So you could talk about the potential for home offices, which I think most people would be fine with. You could talk about the potential for dwellings, which would include the potential for rentals and short-term rentals.
Or in-law suites for our aging population.
I don't know, we might get through this pandemic and people want to go back to the office.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't wait for my husband to go back to the office.
It's
Yeah,
going to be.
I really think there's a misunderstanding of somebody working at home.
Well, he brought his leash to the door and said, "Come on, let's go." So we looked.
What?
Nothing, it was background.
I think that was background noise.
Oh.
I think
there's a misunderstanding of when you call something a home occupation, when somebody works from home, it isn't the same as having a business, running a business out of your house. I don't know how you verbally can distinguish it, except to say that it's personal space above the garage, finished space above the garage. So Wendy, for example, so you sell real estate. If you did your personal work up there, your computer work and stuff like that, that's one thing. But if you start seeing clients there and having, groups of people come in to your office, that's not the same thing.
That's a different thing.
Talk about people working at home. Yeah, they're working at home. The people all over are working at home now.
okay.
But we-
I think
Not the same thing as running a business out of your house.
okay. We are
then we
going
can
on a
do
tandem
the-
conversation. Let's all think about this and come up with a policy for. Let's think about this. We've beaten this up all rounds. Maybe we send you, Patty, as the president, our thoughts, and you compile the question for Nancy to take to the board.
Dale, can we sort of talk amongst ourselves by email and come up with a,
No, I don't think so.
No, sunshine violation.
No.
okay, well, I guess everybody can submit stuff to me and I can come up with
Right.
something to present at the next meeting.
Yeah, as long as it's a one-way conversation, they all,
So if that's
submit
okay
to
with
you.
everybody, let's
Yeah.
stop talking about this right now. Send me your basic position and any ideas you have to
What the policy
fix
question
the
is.
problem or leave the problem alone. And then if Nancy were to go to council and ask them their position and potentially poll the public, how would you phrase the question?
Okay.
Is that okay? Okay, so that's your homework for the next meeting. We still have agenda items. Can we go back to the agenda, Rob?
Absolutely.
All right, this also came from Rob and Dale about the time to appeal decisions. I have honestly no idea what this is about, so
Sure.
who wants to explain that one?
let me take a shot at it.
I'll share the code section, Dale.
Thanks. In our code, we talk about appeals from, let's say, a decision of Rob or a decision of the planning commission, that you're supposed to appeal after the action is taken by them. But what we don't specify is when can you appeal from BZA to court if there's no petition to council, or if the council does hear it, when does the time start running for when you can appeal? And the reason why this comes up is that the case law in Ohio is somewhere between 30 days after the minutes are approved, 30 days after a written decision is sent to the applicant, or 30 days from when the vote is taken. So we've had this issue come up sort of in the first instance, which is we're pretty clear on when you can appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals, but we want to use something similar for when you have to appeal to the next level. So it's a pretty simple question, and all we really want to do is get your opinion as to how much time you want to give. If you say that it's 30 days from when the minutes are approved, that could be 5-6 months from now because it's taking us a long time. And the case law in Ohio in large part is saying that it's when the minutes are approved, because the codes in the communities are silent on it. So we could say it could be 30 days from when the vote is actually taken, or it could be 30 days from when Rob sends a letter giving them notice.
Which would typically be
The day after, usually.
usually.
Yeah, within a few business days.
Dale, are you talking
Yeah.
about increasing the time to 30 days from 10?
No, we're not talking about the administrative appeal to Board of Zoning Appeals. We're talking about the appeal from the BZA or from council to court. We want to say in the code, you have to appeal within 30 days from, could be from a date written decision is sent by Rob, or 30 days when received, whatever you want.
Yeah. I don't think we can go by minutes, and I don't feel like it's fair to go by the time of the vote. It seems like they have to receive something official in writing.
But Dale, here's a question I have. Would this be anybody not even involved in the application? It could be a neighbor wishing to appeal this, because they necessarily wouldn't receive a copy of any decision.
Right, that's correct.
So
But,
in that case, it
you know,
would make more sense to make it from the 30 days or whatever time frame from the date the decision is made.
But they don't have documentation of that. You're counting on people
Right.
either being at the decision or the recipient of the decision. I
Or
guess
going
if a
to the recording.
neighbor wants to appeal it and they were at the hearing, they don't have to wait until you send a notice out, but they can certainly call you and say, give me a copy of the notice you sent to the property owner. And then they know that that's when their 30 days runs. But if you do it 30 days from when the decision's made, they have less time than if it's 30 days from when you send a notice out.
Well, and also Dale, I normally don't send a notice until the 15-day appeal to council period is exhausted. And that's when I send an official written notice.
so. It's actually 45 days then from the decision.
No. Well, yeah, it can be. Yeah.
Well, actually, though, that it would be another 30 days on top of the 15, because if council gets up to 15 days to appeal itself,
That's
Then-
45
Right.
days.
then you'd have to give them another 30 days after that, because council could reverse the decision and they maybe wouldn't just.
Right, they would need to appeal.
Or,
Well, if there's a petition by 3, then there's no final order yet. It's
right,
still in front of the village, yeah. So, I mean, but you could still use the 30 days from when the final decision is issued by Rob, either the BZA or council.
What do you mean, final decision issued by Rob? You mean,
you mean the notice? He would send
A written notice, yeah.
Yeah.
and do you count when it's sent or when it's received 2 weeks later?
Well, aren't you using
Huh.
email, Rob? Aren't you using email?
I'm emailing written, I'm also mailing any official notice. So
Okay, but emails are
after-
timestamps and they're considered, right, Dale? Can't we say the date of the email?
the date that when a 15-day appeal process has been exhausted, on that date, I do issue a letter, both writing and email, to the applicant telling them that their variance is in effect. Now, if I receive a petition by council and the 3 council members have petitioned, then we immediately send notice. We create that public notice for when that meeting is going to be scheduled. We send that out to the applicant and any interested parties.
So every
But
document
let's
has the
assume-
same date as the email, and that email could
Yeah.
be the date and timestamp.
Let's assume now council has acted. There's no 15-day periods left. So as soon as Rob sends out the notice of what council did, then you could start the 30 days running from council's action.
As
So,
as represented by the whatever Rob sends out. So you can do the 30 days from Rob's email and
Notice.
document. Notice the date on the document matches the email date. And sometimes they get 45 days and sometimes they get 30.
Right.
That-
Again, this is
Well,
to
they'll get,
appeal to court.
No.
yes, yes, yes. Look at 11.11.10G on the screen. We'd be adding language to that section.
May appeal council's decision pursuant to OC blah, 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 or Ohio RC. So that would be appealing it to a court, though.
Correct.
So the date on the court document or the whatever they file with the court has to be within 30 days of Rob's email.
Correct.
Is
Period.
60
Whether-
days ridiculous?
What?
Is 60 days out of the question?
Yeah. Yeah, because let's assume somebody gets a variance approved and a neighbor opposes. You don't want to have that property owner have to wait 2 months to find out if somebody's filed an appeal. And the chapter 2506 talks about 30 days from the final action. So we
Okay.
would not want to go greater than 30.
Okay.
We just want to define what is the date that it starts running.
Well, I would say since when the minutes are approved is completely out of the question because of how that goes. I'd say probably from the time Rob sends the email. That gives a little more time than the actual vote. And it does provide like a solid documentation of what the decision was. I mean, if you're at a meeting, I guess it's, can be confusing and a lot going on. And I think basing it on a written documentation of what's happened is the thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's reasonable.
But
Okay,
what
so-
I also was thinking is if Rob, there's no real time limit within which Rob should send out the letter. What if he do it the next day, or what if he waited a week for
Right.
some reason?
Well, he could wait a week and that's just the way that case would go then, right? I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
And should we not say Rob Jameson? Should it be Rob
No, it has to
Jameson
be
and
Village of
or Village?
See.
Yeah.
No, it's
Chief-
not gonna say his name.
yeah, it won't be Rob.
Chief Administrative Officer.
Okay.
Um,
got it.
So, and anybody else have discussion, or I'll make a motion if not.
Well, actually, right now, though, it's the clerk, isn't it? That our code?
The clerk of council is supposed to be sending that petition notice out,
Right.
but Rob has been doing it since inception.
Dale, should you draft language for what this will say and then bring it
Sure.
back for us to move to approve?
Yep, I can do that.
So it would be 30 days from when Rob
Sends a notice.
The date of the letter.
and then we'll vote to approve it next time, assuming
Sure.
everything's the way you
Yes.
word. Okay,
Yep. Okay.
all right, next item.
Well, actually, since I looked at that section, there's that, where is it? The 10-day time period. Yeah. 11-11-03A, that 10 days there.
11-11. Which section? 11-11-03?
3A.
Yeah.
So that 10 days seems like a short amount of time.
You
Because
do not want to lengthen that. Absolutely do not want to lengthen that,
Why not?
because then you're just taking too much time in the administrative process. And if again, this is somebody, Rob could issue a permit and the neighbor doesn't like it. We don't want everybody having to wait a month to see if any neighbors appeal. I'm telling you, Nancy, don't even think about this one. Every community I know has 10 days and it works really well.
Reduces the exposure, right?
Yeah, it gives more certainty, gives property owners a chance to move forward. We don't want to be waiting a month for some neighbor to decide if they want to appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
And deciding you're going to appeal doesn't involve getting a lawyer and providing a whole bunch of evidence or anything. It's just saying, I am appealing, and the date for the meeting will be set for whenever in the future. So then people will have time
Well,
to.
that's the administrative officer. How would anybody know what the administrative officer did? He
Oh, it
doesn't,
happens all the time. I bet you half of the appeals I deal with, not in the village, but in general, are from people who are upset that a permit was issued and they appeal it, usually alleging error by the zoning inspector or whatever. Happens all the time. But the point is, Nancy, whether you made it 10 days or 30 days, you still have that same conundrum. How would the neighbors know about it? The way they know is they have to be vigilant about what the property owners are doing. But typically, this 10-day period is for the property owner who's been denied a permit. Most of the time in our village, that's what applies. But we want them to move along too. So I'm just telling you, 10 days has been in our code forever. No one has ever had a problem. Let's not create another problem that doesn't exist. I'm adamant about this one. Don't touch it.
Throw off your calendar.
Yeah.
Okay, Nancy, ready to move on, or?
yeah, fine, whatever.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, no. Administrative error code language. So Rob, this is something you wanted to bring up, that right now we don't have anything to protect against the possibility of administrative error.
Right. We didn't want to have a situation occur again where somebody's application for a project was shut down or ended due to an error in either a date, any kind of language that was done on behalf of the village. It's our belief, and I talked with Julie and Dale about this, we would want any project submitted to be judged on the face of the project or the merits of the project, according to obviously our code requirements. But if they were instructed incorrectly due to an error on our behalf, that would not be to their detriment. Clearly, we do everything within our power to prevent that from happening. It does happen from time to time, and that's something that we feel, after talking with Dale and Julie, there's some ideas where we might be able to add some language to allow for this to be addressed. So I wanted to throw it out for discussion, and I mean, this is obviously just more throw it out to start the discussion like we have with these other items.
Is this to protect the village or to allow for?
No, it's mainly protect the applicant, whoever's submitting a project for review and approval, because we don't want the situation where somebody's approval process or review process would be cut short because of an error on our behalf.
Nicole, the typical example is somebody calls the village and says, what's the last day for me to file my appeal? And if they're given the wrong date and they wait until that date and now they can't appeal because they waited too long, we really don't want to penalize them because of our error.
Oh, okay.
But you don't have any documentation of that error, or?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Yes.
In the case that caused us to think about it, it was in a letter. There was an error in the letter as to the date.
Oh,
That makes sense.
but if somebody picks up the phone and said, "Oh, you have by the 15th,"
Right.
we
Right.
won't have that.
They'd have to prove that it was our
Right,
error.
Right.
So
Okay.
we would say it has to be we could say it's got to be by a written error by us. Yeah.
And then
That makes sense.
this would in no way ever lead to somebody getting automatic approval or
No,
getting a variance because
It would-
we
it-
failed to tell them whatever.
No,
No,
would
it just gives
allow for the
them a
proper-
right of appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It allows them to, it gives them an opportunity to do what they wanted to do. To ask for
whatever they want to do.
Go through the proper review and vote on their project.
What about notice? Like, that seems like a pretty big area of possible administrative error, like people didn't get their notice of the BZA hearing, or if things are incorrect, either not listed on the website or incorrectly listed on the website. Would errors of omission in terms of notice or on the website count?
Our code says that failure to get notice to the neighbors does not invalidate the hearing. If, for example, though, we made a mistake on the website and posted it for the wrong day and caught that before the hearing, we would probably just cancel the hearing and schedule it another day so that people would have an opportunity to have fair notice.
So there's nothing to ensure that people will get notice.
Well, that's required.
This
doesn't.
Yeah, but if they didn't,
This has nothing to do with that.
If we send it, we've accomplished our
it's no
requirement.
longer administrative error.
That's not an error on our behalf.
Well, no, I was suggesting, like, what if somebody wasn't identified as, okay, they're not within the 300-foot radius, or, if somebody wasn't identified as being eligible to get notice, then that would be considered administrative error.
It's a different point than what Rob was bringing up, but
Yeah.
It's now with the county GIS system, it's pretty easy to know who everybody is. And we do it all by the real property tax mailing addresses. So getting notice out to everybody is pretty easy to do. But
I was just trying to think of what kind of error this might involve, other than just being told the wrong date.
Well, this would cover, the only thing we would cover here is if somebody lost the right of appeal. That's the only point that's being raised here.
But that could be a homeowner or a neighbor.
Right.
Okay, well, I'd say the same thing should happen, that you and Julie and Rob work out, or Dale, you, Rob, and Julie work out what kind of language you would propose to address the issue, where it would go in the code. And then we can look at it for next time and vote on it.
Sure. This is a pretty easy one to do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, the last thing was just something that is kind of in the realm of what I was going to propose to everybody, is to kind of think of things that you feel we should address. We've got revisiting home occupations now from Nicole. So if anybody wants to, in the coming year or coming meetings, talk about issues, maybe you could shoot me an email, or Rob, and we can put anything on the agenda for next time. This one that's on here tonight, we don't really have to talk about tonight, but is something that has been bothering me, that goes back to when we talked about enclosed and unenclosed porches and outdoor spaces. So it's sort of like the accessory structure thing. But when we were talking about, well, people build their patio, then they put a roof over it, and then some people have screens, some people then put in glass, some people build walls, and so what do you call enclosed versus unenclosed? And that'll impact, for residential, that'll impact your allowable footprint. So we got a lot of pushback when we talked about this last year, maybe from, I remember George Clemens for sure, saying that would really limit what people want to do with their homes these days. But I've just been noticing, particularly with the old Jekyll's, 17 River, and also now Bull and Bird, there seems to be a trend, and both of those restaurants are being done by the same person. So maybe it's just his particular mode of action, where it's sort of, instead of trying to get a bigger building, which isn't allowed, they sort of do a piecemeal approach of getting a patio and then or a porch, and then adding a roof, and then lo and behold, asking for it to be enclosed. And in the end, they end up with something that never would have been allowed under our code. So I don't know, it's just something to think about maybe for the future. I don't know if there's any way to, even deal with it, but off 17 River, they pushed BZA for a variance to build in the river buffer that deck along the back, which they said was just for aesthetic purposes to kind of tie the two sides together, and so you wouldn't have that big blank wall, but it wouldn't be for seating. Then there was seating there. Then they added a roof there because, I don't know, just so they could use it, I guess, in inclement weather. Now they've asked ARB for skylights in the roof because adding the roof made it too dark. So, I'm just wondering, like, okay, so when are they gonna, start putting the vinyl curtains up? And then after that, they'll come and say, well, we already have the vinyl curtains and it's basically in conditioned space. So can we just, enclose it? And then you'll have, an enclosed space. Kind of what happened with Bull and Bird, where we approved the modification of the setback so they could have that outdoor dining porch, which had a roof always. Then they put the vinyl curtains, and then, we gave them permission to go ahead and enclose it, because at this point it's basically enclosed anyways with the vinyl curtains, and it'll look better, I think, to have the windows. So I just worry that, with this trend, that this could happen a lot. And to me, it really does change the mass and appearance of the buildings. And if you think about all the Riverside properties saying, oh, we want a deck. A deck's not so bad. It'll provide outdoor space and it'll be, not that aesthetically imposing. And then if it gets, before you know it, it gets turned into part of the building, I think that changes it. So I guess I was wondering, Julie, if you could look into how if we even look at area for commercial spaces. Is Julie still on?
I'm here.
Do you have any thoughts on this, or no? Like, is it just, each step of the way gets its own approval, so there's nothing we can do about it? Or what do you think?
Right, we talked about at one point changing the standard to count all the area that's under roof. But I believe even now, well, the only thing we regulate for commercial is via setbacks. There's no minimum coverage. So theoretically, as long as you meet the setbacks, you're fine. And we do require outdoor seating areas to meet the setbacks and to be considered, they're part of the calculation. So a patio versus a enclosed part of the building doesn't really matter for commercial, as long as. Well, I don't know. You could decide that each one of those steps, if you're assuming that everything in the central shopping district is a non-conforming building, because they probably don't meet the setbacks, right? So if you think every single one of those steps should trigger consideration for enlarging or alteration of a non-conforming structure, you could bring it back every time and look at that. And, but is it necessary? If it's something we're approving by rote?
I guess it's coming back every time anyways, isn't it, Dale and Rob? Like, if
anytime you change the type of the structure, then yes.
Yeah, and that's how the Bull and Bird situation was, right.
So what I tried to say for Bull and Bird the last time was the new covered patio that they're proposing, not the one that's already there, but they were proposing another to the right of the doorway, a new patio or deck or eating porch or something with a roof. And what I wanted to say was that we will approve the modification of the setback to allow this as an open dining porch with a roof and a floor, but no walls. And I think Nancy, you said that that I could not state that I had to just say, I approve the setback modification, and they could do whatever they wanted in there.
Well, you would have to come back if they went to enclose that area, I believe, because that's what we did for the other enclosed patio or the unenclosed patio. They had just the drop down vinyl sides. When they proposed to enclose that, it was a different building type, and that's when they came back.
Right.
I'd have
And
to
I don't
do-
think you can, I don't think you can dictate in one decision that, okay, we're making this decision so that you don't come back again to us later and ask us to make another one, because there could be a change in ownership. There's all kinds of things that, I don't know, Dale probably has an opinion, but it seems like you can't necessarily preclude someone from coming in and asking for another variance or something to the alteration of a non-conforming use just because you're giving them one this time. You can't just say, oh, it's the last time. And especially
Right.
if buildings change in response to business climate and new owners and new activity.
So, yeah, so it'd be up to
No.
whatever board or whoever's hearing it the next time.
The next time, that's my thought anyway.
Okay.
I don't think you can cut somebody off in that way.
You cannot.
Yeah, it's just like, I would like to say, I'm fine with the setback modification for an open porch, but I wouldn't really be okay with it being an enclosed thing. But I understand what you're saying, that I can't.
I don't think you could make a motion that with that stipulation in it. I think you could probably, I'm sure you can say it as part of the minutes so that if it comes up in the future and someone reviews the minutes, they would know.
Okay.
I don't think you can, I mean, you just can't constrain a future consideration.
Dale, are you agree with all that?
Yes.
Okay.
So how does that, I feel like almost everything we're talking about gets around to the same issue, residential or commercial use of property, who decides what can be changed, and everybody wants, more. People want more uses out of their homes, and the people who are building restaurants want more seating, and the developers want units that are bigger and or more units on a property. It seems like that's a lot of what we deal with all the time. So for Brick House, we said, well, we're going to do a development agreement because it was such a complex and so many things, so that we don't have to keep, so that we protect the areas we want to protect, et cetera. And I almost feel like, even when we're talking about the accessory structures, we're trying to say, what's the character of our community? What's it been? How is the world changing in, how they use residences and commercial buildings? And then how do we react to it? And that, to me, almost encapsulates what we were talking about earlier about, what we're looking to council to help us do, to help us say, how do we feel our community that has a lot of historic importance to us and to people who live here and to people who work here, but how do we, bring it into the future when design changes and living styles change and dwelling styles change? I mean, I think that it seems to me like that's the picture we're wrestling with, whether we're talking about a new development or we're talking about a adaptive reuse of buildings, or we're talking about what people do on their property. It seems like
I
it
agree.
all ties together to me.
Yeah,
It does. I agree.
definitely. It's just how to, it's hard enough when you're working with one developer and can, wrangle this language to try to get them to sort of abide by some of what we want them to do, and how you could do that for a neighborhood or a commercial district or whatever.
Well, it's called a master plan. I mean, it's so, but with a community so old as ours, there's so much retrofit, there's so much
Yeah,
updating and so many different opinions.
yeah,
Yeah, you don't have an unreasonably high number of variances being brought to you. In fact, I'm surprised that we don't have more. Where you're getting them is typically in the area requirements for people whose homes are already non-conforming. So anything they do has to come back in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals. But if you took that out of the equation, we really don't get a lot of variances. What surprised me perhaps is how many modifications your commission has had to hear in the last 4 or 5 years. You know, a lot of it dealing with Brick House, and if we had the north side of Spillway, there would have been a lot of those too.
I don't know. I don't remember ever getting these modifications so much, or if at all. It seems almost like nobody knew it was a means to try to get what they wanted before. Now, in the past few years, the floodgates have opened, which is hard for us, but easier.
We were always, from certain developers, I mean, Brick House wasn't a surprise to me
Yeah.
because we had dealt with them elsewhere.
Yeah.
Just like Knez wasn't a surprise to me that they were relatively easy and cooperative because I had dealt with them elsewhere. So part of it is just, you know, we've had a few, and we have such scarce resource, such scarce land.
Right. All right, well, does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up, or? No.
Oh, Patty,
Yeah.
set the date for the next
Oh,
meeting.
yeah, that's right. February is President's Day. The village is officially closed. And
But we were closed today too.
No.
No, we weren't.
not the village.
Shh.
Okay.
So what, anybody have a good idea about how to? Rob, how does the village calendar look, what days would be available?
Well, I think like Wednesdays are always a good day. Wednesday, the 17th.
Julie, I think you said you had a conflict next month. Does that help you at all to go to the 17th?
No, the 17th and 18th are not good for me.
Okay.
You want to just move it to the 22nd, guys?
We have a council meeting.
Council meeting.
Are
about
they
the six-
important?
Yeah. What about the 16th?
Oh, 16.
Tuesday, the 16th. Is that right?
I can't do Tuesday.
That's a little tight.
23rd.
Well, I can do Monday the 15th. if
BZA.
that's your holiday.
Yeah.
Can we have a meeting on a holiday or no? I mean,
Sure.
Well, not if we want Rob or Harry to, right? Don't you guys
Or
follow the village calendar?
Well, that is our holiday off.
Right.
got it. Okay, sorry.
About the 18th.
The 18th didn't work for Julie,
Julie.
Oh,
but
what about the 8th? No, you have another meeting.
Council meeting.
Julie, do you think, I think, could we function without you if?
Sure.
If you've gotten, Dale, can you participate?
Yes.
And you'll be working with Julie on the language for a couple of these things.
Yeah.
Right? So, we could probably do that.
Okay.
And Julie, I might be in touch with you about the garage accessory building area issue for your input. So maybe, we'll have your input secondhand, if that's okay.
You can always keep the discussion going. If there's anything outstanding,
Sure.
you can always move
So
that.
then, if that's the case that we're not limited by Julie's calendar, which one, 16, 17, or 18? We do.
this far in advance, any of them work for me.
I prefer the 17th personally.
Well, then let's go with that.
Nancy?
It's good for me.
That's really the only day that's good for me is the 17th, Wednesday. Right?
Wednesday, 17th. Dale, you can do that?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go with that and hope it works out. Okay, well then, I think we could be adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Right.
Night.
Good night.
Thanks.